everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Outside Line Podcast. The Outside Line Podcast. Outside Line Podcast.
Hang on to her, buddy. There's still three. He got him. He's
It just makes sense. It's too logical for them, for NASCAR, though.
Carson.
I'm glad you hear us, NASCAR. Make sure you keep listening. We'll see what happens. I'm going to take a breath here. That was a long rant.
Those cars are a lot tougher than an F1 car.
Yeah, that's what I like about IndyCar. You really need the spotter.
This is going to be fun. IndyCar is in Mid-Ohio this coming weekend. I actually do not have my notes ready. So, like I said, IndyCar is in Mid-Ohio this weekend. A very unique road course out there, just kind of in the middle of nowhere, if I'm being perfectly honest. But it is a very unique track. If I can have my internet go a little faster, there we go.
You're gonna make us freeze.
Nah, we're fine. We're fine. So Scott McLaughlin last year came out with the win. Do we see anybody other than Palou just blowing everybody out of the water again?
Yeah, I think Newgarden will be up there.
Newgarden?
I was going to say Newgarden. Yeah, I was going to say Newgarden. Listen, he's experienced, and you never underestimate Newgarden. I learned that in the Indy 500. Never underestimate Newgarden. Never.
I'm thinking Newgarden and maybe Ericsson? Yeah, I was thinking Ericsson.
Pretty good. You've been doing pretty good. Or a word. One of those.
Yeah, Pato has not had luck in the last month or so.
I was thinking maybe Power and Newgarden.
Moral of the story, it'll probably be a Penske day.
Yeah. Although I'll admit I don't know anything about Mid-Ohio. For some reason, it's a track I've never driven on any racing game before.
It's weird. It's really weird. If you look at the track map,
There's no straightaway.
Let me see. Yeah, I mean the front straightaway is like 1,000.
Oh, there is. Yeah, but it's not very big.
It's short.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like Watkins Glen, the NASCAR layout?
Shorter?
Yeah. But they do have a very long back straightaway, and it's and so if you're coming out of the keyhole, which is turn 2, go down into turn 3, where the kink is. That's the entire back straightaway going into turn 4. So it's really long, but the front straightaway is only like 1,000 yards or something like that. Maybe not even that. So
I'm looking at the track map right now.
Yeah, it's different.
It is a very odd racetrack. It reminds me a little bit of Hungary, Budapest.
Me too.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Track.
Mm-hmm. I've never been a huge fan of Mid-Ohio, but it's definitely unique, to say the least.
Yeah. Does it have issues with tires like Budapest does?
Not from what I remember. I don't remember there being many issues last year, but that's not saying much, obviously. I don't know if the track's ever been repaved.
Because, like, Budapest is that'll eat your tires up, and that makes your tires overheat. Something awful.
Oh, yeah.
When I'm
Yeah,
racing
so
on Budapest in any racing game, that annoys me.
I'm so bad at it for no reason. Like, it's so hard.
Budapest and the Netherlands are two tracks I can never get down.
You know,
Mhm.
I always said, Chris, that I was good at Monaco, but F1 2023 has kind of gotten rid of that. And I was so upset with my Monaco race, my career mode yesterday, that I just drove it into the wall and just ended the session. I got like 7 laps in, and I was like, I can't do this anymore, dude. Because I gave up.
Paulina, have you
you?
gotten F1 2023?
No, my brother did. I have not yet. I gotta get on that. Probably some point next month. I'm gonna get it because I just want to race the Vegas one myself. I want to see for myself how it's gonna be.
It's interesting. I've raced on it quite a few times, and honestly, like racing on it, I think that there's places to pass and stuff, but there's the long straightaway is gonna really show the whose equipment is where.
Yeah, the front straightaway is going to be just a DRS train.
Yeah,
Honestly.
and some of the break, I think we talk about is there gonna be issues and stuff like that, and I think just some of the braking zones are really weird. There's one braking zone where you're basically you're going full throttle, turning right, and then it just very quickly you've got to brake and then go left. And so some of the braking zones are just really weird. We're bound to see some mistakes at some point, whether it may only happen in practice, but we're going to see some mistakes in those braking zones. And that's the one thing that I noticed specifically when I raced on the track was those braking zones they're going to cause some issues one way or another.
Mason, have you forced a red flag yet?
Still not yet. Because I honestly I just want it to happen naturally. And the thing is I even upped my sessions. So like I've been doing like closer to like 30 lap sessions rather than the 20 lap races. And even that hasn't changed anything. I did the entire 7 laps at Monaco, no red flag. It was just 7 laps. I could have went the whole lap, but and then I just did I did Canada earlier, and I went 25 laps, no red flag, not even a safety car. So it's I may have to force it, but I'll do it in a Vegas Grand Prix. Just playing around with it. I'll do it later today.
It's what you said last week.
Well, I got busy. I remember I made lunch, and what can I say? I was hangry, man.
I remember the last time you were hangry, you went on that rant about Austin Dillon. Just because Austin Dillon has been underwhelming.
I think it's kind of I can see where you're going with that because I think like having Kyle Busch just kind of walk in and really elevate that team. I think it has shown, and even when Tyler Reddick was there and Tyler Reddick was winning races the way he was, it really showed the gap to Austin Dillon. And so if this was any other sort of scenario, right, and if this was any other sort of team where the boss of Austin Dillon was not his grandfather, he would have been out of this ride multiple years ago. So that's an extremely good point, Chris, because he would not have been around. He would not be in this car right now if his grandfather wasn't the boss. And he's now been outrun by 2 guys that have come into that organization after him, and he has gotten outrun and they have won more races than he has in his entire tenure. I mean, Busch is at 3. If Dillon's at 4, Busch could hit the same amount of wins as Dillon that Dillon's taken 8 years to earn, literally next week. Yep. I mean, that's insane. I think that it has very much showed the, where Austin Dillon just doesn't have it. And I think maybe that's where we see some of that frustration out of the media room yesterday with the immediate call out for Austin Cindric. Because, I mean, hey, it could have been a lot easier if he was running up front with his teammate, but he wasn't. So just pointing it out.
No, you're not wrong. You are not wrong about that.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm a little hangry right now, but in a good way, because I just saw the render for this Dr. Pepper strawberries and cream car.
You're welcome.
Granted, it's missing a logo on the quarter panel. It's a beautiful looking machine.
For those of you who are listening, We are talking about Bubba's Dr. Pepper Strawberries and Cream car. He ran. What race was this? Was this Kansas or North Wilkesboro?
I think it's Wilkesboro.
Yeah.
I feel like it was North Wilkesboro, but anyway. So that is what they're talking about. They're making that into a diecast for me to spend more money on, but we will not talk about that. And or Chris can spend more money on because he's been buying more diecast than I have recently.
Yeah. They've been cheap, though.
Oh, that sounds nice.
That
sounds nice.
Shopping like a billionaire. It's not an ad.
Okay. Anyway,
Yeah, we are not sponsored.
We are
If
not
you wanna
sponsored, by the way.
us,
We are not
Right.
sponsored. Anyway, before we get too distracted, once again, who's our podium for this weekend at Mid-Ohio? Chris, why don't we start with you once again? Because I know you like to take, once again, 5 different drivers.
I'm thinking Newgarden, Power, and let's see who would be who's going to be good third place driver. Dixon. He had a good race last race. And he's been sneaking right around, and I think he might be getting on the podium.
Okay. Mason, what about you?
I'm feeling a little bit bold with it. I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna go Scott Dixon. I'm gonna say Marcus Ericsson, and then I'm gonna round out the top 3 with give me Willpower.
Willpower.
So we'll go Dixon,
Paulina.
Ericsson, Power.
Okay. Paulina, how about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go definitely Newgarden. I definitely think he's gonna
Newgarden?
have it this time. Second, I'm gonna go with McLaughlin.
That's a good choice.
Yeah.
Throwing it out there because I think he's gonna definitely have a good race. And then Polo, I'm gonna have third.
Hello. Okay.
Yeah, we were kind of jerks. We just totally leave out Alex Palou after talking about his domination the last few weeks. But
Yeah.
I'm not honestly. I see Palou as like that 4th, 5th place car this weekend. I don't know if he's going to be top 3, but hey, you know what? He'll prove me wrong. I'm sure we got a lot of proven wrong for all these drivers and people to do this weekend. So
Well, I'm going to go a little bold. I think Pato's going to get out of his bad luck streak. So I think Pato's going to get the dub on Sunday. Then I'm going to say Dixon and then McLaughlin. So
Oh man, I
Pato,
should pick McLaughlin.
Dixon, and McLaughlin are my top 3.
I already forgot my first one. Did I pick Newgarden?
Yes.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are our podiums for Mid-Ohio. So Mason, you want to do a little coming to the line real quick?
oh yeah, folks, it's time for another segment of Coming to the Line.
Whoa.
We're going to get right back to it this week. We've got 3 questions for everybody. Everybody's going to get about a minute to basically answer these questions to their best ability and give their opinion, give their thoughts. So we've got one for each of the 3 series that we cover this week. We're going to start off with our first question. Who is the next F1 driver to win a race other than a Red Bull driver? We're going to start off with Jacob this time. Jacob, what are your thoughts?
Fernando Alonso. He's just been so close all season, and Aston Martin needs to find that little something that they need, and they'll be right there contending for wins with Red Bull. But as of right now, they're usually like 10 seconds back of Red Bull in the finishing positions. So it'll probably take maybe a lucky break with Verstappen or Perez, just getting a puncture, engine issues, whatnot. But I think Fernando Alonso will be the next driver aside from a Red Bull to win a race.
Okay, Paulina, let's go to you.
I'm gonna say I could be a little biased here, but I'm gonna say Hamilton, and for a couple of reasons. I feel like he's just so hungry to win again after last year, after how frustrating he was, after seeing George win and not him. Mercedes is going to win at least one, whether it's a race where Red Bull, DNF, or they crash. They're going to win one. And I think that's going to definitely be Hamilton. The only thing is Mercedes does have to get their, stuff together as far as their upgrades, because they always say, oh, we're going to have big upgrades, and it doesn't really do much. But I do feel like over this past weekend, I could definitely see the pace and Mercedes, how they're, I say they're third. Just behind, that Aston Martin. So that's also another thing. They have to be equal with Aston Martin, and it's not going to be easy because I think Alonso is he's hungry for a win. So it's going to be between the two, but I'm going to say it's going to be Hamilton just because I know he's hungry. I know his demeanor. He wants to still keep racing. He's still in that same mindset. So it's going to be a Mercedes, and I think it's going to be Hamilton.
Well, and to your point, you can visibly see Mercedes getting better as a team. Hamilton has mentioned it in his most recent meetings in multiple weeks now. So they have a lot of confidence there. And to your point as well, do they continue to improve, or do they stall out at some point? That's kind of the big question right now that we'll have for the rest of the season. So, Chris, what are your thoughts? Who's the next F1 driver to win a race other than a Red Bull driver?
I was thinking about Hamilton, but I think I might go with Charles. I'm a little bit biased, but
obviously you're a little bit biased. We know
a
you
little bit,
just a little bit, but I think Ferrari are just plain going to get lucky at some point this season, and because how much wrong can they be? The law of averages will get them at some point.
That's the part you don't get, though, is that they're going to win the race because their strategy was so bad they ended up winning it.
Yeah, like they leave on, like they start the race with wet tires and somehow win it. But I think that Charles will get it done, and I think it might even be a thing where he actually goes against Ferrari's strategy and just either pits when he wants to or doesn't pit and just completely shuts out the pit wall. And I think it'll be Charles.
All right. Well, we've got our answers there. We're going to move on to the second question.
Well, hold up.
Oh,
what about
no.
you?
What about me?
Yeah.
I agree with Paulina. I think Lewis is the next guy to get it. I think
he's the host.
I'm the host.
He's the host. He doesn't have to give an answer.
To be fair, though, in all honesty, I 100% agree with Paulina. I really see Lewis getting up there and getting it just because of the improvements that Mercedes has made recently. I'm not saying that they're anywhere near close to Red Bull right now, but to her point, we're going to see a race where something happens to Red Bull and there's going to be an opportunity, and I think Lewis is going to jump on it. So it just got to hope that it's on one of their good weekends, which they've had multiple of over the course of the season. So, but Alonso's close behind too. So you have that as well. Now, on to the second question. Who is your driver to keep an eye on the rest of this IndyCar season? Chris, we'll start with you.
I'm not going to say Alex Palou because that's the obvious answer, but I'm thinking maybe Scott Dixon because he's been right there. He's been sneaking around top 10, top 5. And like they said, wasn't he the one that they compared to Kevin Harvick at Long Beach?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
And he's always right there, right in the mix. And he usually comes up out of nowhere. So I think he's might be one to keep an eye on. I don't know if he'll win the championship, but he's one to definitely keep an eye on.
All right, Jacob.
Man, I don't know because obviously Alex Palou is the favorite right now. He currently has a 74-point lead over his closest competitor, which is Marcus Ericsson. But if I had to pick one, it would have to be Newgarden, because you can't ever count out Joseph Newgarden. Especially with his win at Indy. He only led like 18 laps that day, but he got the great restart on the green white checkered. We'll call it a green white checkered, and was able to get his first Indy 500 win, break that winless streak there. So you can just never count out Team Penske and Joseph Newgarden. That's why he's a two-time champion, and same thing with Scott Dixon, because the little kid in me wants to see the six-time champion become a seven-time champion in the series. But do I think it'll happen this season? Probably not.
Fair point. All right, Paulina, your thoughts?
I'm gonna say Newgarden too, and for similar reasons what Jacob was just saying. You can't count him out. Neither is good Dixon. That would be another one I can think of, but I feel like Dixon may be a little too far back. I definitely feel like Newgarden, I think he's only like 80 points like behind first. I know it's a big gap, but listen, you cannot count him out. He has so much experience. He already won, I think, 2 races this year, couple top 3s, several top 10s. So I really think he's gonna win Mid Ohio. I think he's won it before. He's gonna win it again, and you can't count him out. So you never know. He may not win this year, but he can make an argument for maybe second, or even get up to Palou, because if Palou ends up starting to drop off a bit, Newgarden will be right there.
Absolutely. If I had to pick one, I really like Newgarden getting up there, and obviously he's had a few solid weeks, but I really like Colton Herta as well. I think he's made a lot of progress throughout the season, and he's gotten better, but he's been getting up there and having some good runs. I feel like at some point, right? I'm maybe not as a championship contender, but I think Colton Herta at some point, right? He's going to break through, and we're going to see a win or two from him. And so that's what I'm kind of keeping my eye on, is when is he going to get that win? I think at some point this year, Colton Herta will find himself in victory lane. It's just a matter of when. But this past, the most recent race, he finished 5th. So there's a lot of momentum on his side. We'll have to see if it carries over. Now, our last question, NASCAR related. This one really simple. We'll start it off with Chris over here. What's wrong with Stewart-Haas Racing?
Oh, there's a lot wrong with Stewart-Haas Racing. I don't know where to begin, honestly.
Jesus.
You've got 1 minute. Timer starts when you start your point.
What? Where did they finish?
Not well.
So as far as SHR's finishing positions, you're looking at, let's see. We've got Ryan Preece in 16th. We've got Kevin Harvick in 24th, Eric Almirola in 25th, and Chase Briscoe in 31st, behind both Legacy Motor Club cars, behind Brickware Racing and JJ
cars.
Yaley. He was competing last night with Ty Dillon and Brennan Poole in the 15 car.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Stewart-Haas. I think a little bit of it's been bad luck, because, like, looking at Kevin Harvick, I think Kevin Harvick too is at the point where it's like, I'm retiring. I think there's a little bit of that in there, but at the same time, I think it's a lot of bad luck with him. But I don't know, man. Maybe Tony Stewart is getting a little bit too patient with his drivers, if you catch my meaning.
I'll say this. I don't necessarily want to blame it on the drivers, because why is it every single race, Chase Briscoe, we get a shot? And I don't know if we got it yesterday with NBC. I don't know if I saw it, but I know it was like clockwork every week with Fox. It was like they would have the graphic ready to go, here's Chase Briscoe. He's lost 12 spots and 34th, way off the pace. Like, it was every single week. He's like way off the pace to start the race. And they're like, oh, they just missed on the setup. How badly do you miss on the setup to be behind Rick Ware Racing when you're supposed to be one of the top echelon in the sport? My God. I mean, it's not even close. They're not even. Ugh.
Who do they
Was
think
that-
they are? Ferrari?
Yes.
Look, I'm a Stewart fan. I've watched him win a championship with this team. I've watched Kevin Harvick win a championship with this team. And who's to say, right? What could Kevin Harvick have done if he hasn't been like, if he hadn't had to carry Stewart-Haas Racing the last like 4 freaking years? Maybe he would still be in championship conversations all the time. Instead, we're just like, oh, he'll win 3 races and then get knocked out. But like, he'd still be a championship contender if he wasn't driving for this team, because he's carrying. I mean, no wonder he's retiring. His back must hurt like crazy. He's carrying everybody on his back.
Speaking of that, if it wasn't for Kevin Harvick, do you think they would still exist?
I think they would. I
Yeah.
do. But I'll say this: if they would never be anywhere near as good without Harvick going to that team. When Harvick went there, a lot changed. Obviously, they had Ryan Newman before then, and Ryan Newman won 4 races in 4 years, I think, with Stewart-Haas Racing, and wasn't bad. But I saw something on Reddit this past week that a guy said, he almost felt like Ryan Newman was like a bridge driver to get to Kevin Harvick. Like, a plan was always in place for Harvick was going to end up driving for Stewart's race team at some point. They'd been buddies in that sort of thing. I'm sure that maybe that had been a conversation in the background, but that might have always been the plan, is to get his butt over there. And it just so happened that it coincided with a lot of other things with SHR and the expansion of that team. They went from a 2-car team with the 14 and the 39 to when Harvick was there, I believe it was a 4-car team at that point, or it might have been a 3-car team and then moved to a 4-car team a few years later with the 14, 41, the 10 and all the cars that we're used to now, the numbers that we're used to now. But it wasn't always that way. And I think, honestly, you forget Ryan Newman drove in the 39. I forget. I had to be reminded this week. I was like, oh yeah, he drove for Stewart-Haas. Stewart-Haas used to own the 39. Nobody drives the 39 except for Ryan Sieg.
I still picture him driving the 12. Anyways.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Jacob Barker, what's wrong with SHR, dude?
Well, first of all, I think it's because they're with Ford. Ford has been lacking behind a lot this year.
My grandfather's rolling his grave. He was a Ford man.
Yeah, so that's granted. Team Penske has already won 2 races this year.
Blaney's carrying, though. Logano doesn't look that good right now.
So something is going on with Ford. Now, does that mean that they should switch back from Ford to Chevy? No. Do they have a driver issue? Yeah, a little bit. But the big problem, I think, with SHR right now is that they are with Ford, who is not the best manufacturer in the Cup Series right now. Chevy is, and that's how I feel about that. That's my thought, but you just consistently notice that SHR is not good on a weekly basis, and I think it's because of Ford.
And the best part about that is that if they're going to switch to a different manufacturer, it's Tony's probably not going back to Chevy. I think he said recently this week in an interview, talking about the whole Josh Berry thing, that right now they're with Ford. But from his words, it didn't sound like this is a set in stone thing. And it's important to remember that he's got this NHRA deal with Dodge, right? And he's been doing some stuff with Dodge. And so maybe he's the guy that really pushes to bring Dodge back into this sport. Who knows how that goes, okay? But he may be the guy that gets that push, and especially if this team doesn't look good next year, because without Kevin Harvick, right? And it's no offense to Josh Berry, but they might be, it might be bad next year. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
But it doesn't look good. So, Paulina, do you have any thoughts on this whole scenario?
Yeah. So because I have a tough time following NASCAR. I'm definitely taking a different approach from this. I know that Stewart Haas is owned by none other than Tony Stewart and Gene Haas, which also owns the F1 team. If you can look at the F1 team, you know they're not having much success in the past since 2020. So it's not that hard it's for him to have another success in a whole other, racing league. It's just not going to happen. I'm not saying it's his fault. Also, I feel like Ford is also, like Jacob said, is also part of it, because I know Ford right now is just not performing, where they're supposed to be. And the fact that they're joining F1 in 2026 is a little scary, because unless they do something different, I don't really see an improvement. So I think they have to change the manufacturer if they want to become better. Also, since Tony Stewart, is probably one of the greatest or one of the best NASCAR race, because I remember watching him when I was younger. That's when I was really watching him, because I know my brother was a huge Tony Stewart fan. I was a Jimmy Johnson fan. So I've seen him before. Wait, am I done?
No, I was just cheering. I'm a Tony Stewart fan too.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh,
I'm a Tony fan, so it's a big deal for me.
Okay. So, yeah. So, as much as he was a good racer, sometimes transitioning into that ownership role or coaching ownership role, well, not coaching, but ownership role.
10 seconds.
Sometimes they struggle with it. Just like in basketball, there's other players that go from playing to coaching and they don't start that good. So, yeah, that's that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it is too, guys, as we've seen with SHR. I feel like Tony's kind of gotten more of a, obviously he's still hands-on, but he's not as, I don't want to say he's not as involved as he was in 2014, 2015, 2016. He's out doing a lot of other things. The man is married now. He runs NHRA races all the time in all these different countries. He comes out to Arizona and goes to Lake Havasu a lot. So they're not
occasionally announces.
Yeah. So I just don't think he's as hands-on with things anymore. And I think maybe that has caused the team to kind of not be as good, because the reason they were so successful back in the day, even though they were partnered with Gene Haas, is because this team was disgustingly good. And as an owner, he was completely hands-on. Everything is in his pockets. He knows exactly what's going on. Now, half the time he's in Vegas doing NHRA stuff. He doesn't know what's going on. So he's handed it off to people, but are they the right people? I'm always going to support Zippy, but who knows, man? Stewart will never fire Zippy. Zippy's
no, he will not.
No, Zippy's the man. Greg's always going to be there, but I think Zippy's got to make a lot of bold moves here, and that's what they did this past week with all the crew chief changes. But we can clearly tell that didn't work, and Zippy's got to make some more moves behind the scenes. That's for sure. But folks, that's going to go ahead and wrap up the Coming to the Line segment. A little longer today, but that's okay. Quick little.
That's fine.
Fun little segment for us there. So that's our 3 questions for Coming to the Line.
I just want to say one thing. This is completely off topic, but we have some breaking trade news for the NHL. I just got a notification. Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno have been traded to. Let me rephrase that. Taylor Hall has been traded to the Chicago Blackhawks. And the Hawks received Nick Foligno, which is massive. I did not see Hall becoming a Hawk.
No. So real quickly, the deals of this trade: Alec Regula and Ian Mitchell are going to be heading to Boston. Then Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno are going to be heading to Chicago, along with some salary cap relief as well.
But anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there because I was shocked.
We're not only motorsports analysts, but we're also hockey analysts. Fun facts.
ESPN.
It's the important thing to remember about all of us here at Back Sports Page. We all of us do different sports. Paulina here, she does soccer. I do football. Chris is up here doing the hockey thing. We all do different sorts of things. So there's other articles. Make sure you guys are checking us out. Jacob does motorsports.
I thought you did football too. I'm throwing everything at Jacob all of a sudden.
Okay. Anyway, let's move on to NASCAR, why don't we?
Hey everyone, thanks for watching this most recent edition of the Outside Line podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to check us out on Spotify at The Outside Line. And if you liked Christopher, Jacob, and I's opinions, make sure to check us out on Bagsport's page for more articles and opinions about F1, NASCAR, and IndyCar. Thank you again for watching The Outside Line.